June 22nd, 2020. You please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
Robert,
and
I
justice
can't get my
for
sound.
all.
Thank you. Pam, if you could call the roll.
Hey, folks, I still can't hear you.
We can hear you, Elaine.
I just call her and have her reconnect.
Yeah, Melissa's going to do that.
It's the off and on switch.
Oh,
All right, I'm going to take the roll. Mr. Havens,
Here.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Here.
Mr. Greenwood,
Here.
Mrs. Middlestetter, Mr. Edwards,
Here.
Mayor Schweller.
Here.
my speaker was turned off.
We have a motion to excuse Councilman Hope from tonight's meeting.
So moved.
In a second, please.
A second.
Thank you.
Motion was made. I'm sorry, I missed who. Was that Nick?
Yes.
Okay. A motion was made by Mr. Edwards to excuse Mr. Hoke from tonight's meeting. It was seconded by Mr. Havens. Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes,
Mayor Schweller.
Yes, thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes of June the 8th, 2020. Does any member of council have any corrections or additions to the minutes?
no,
No, Mayor.
None, Mayor.
Seeing none, the minutes are approved as submitted. Next up is the mayor's announcements. Just a couple of items tonight. First off, I want to wish our Bellbrook fathers a belated happy Father's Day. I think the weather cooperated for most of the day, and I hope everyone had a very safe time at the many family gatherings that took place. Secondly, as a point of clarification, at our last council meeting, council adjourned into executive session to discuss the sale or lease of real estate, specifically the sale or lease of approximately 16 acres of land in the well field as part of the Bellbrook Mountain Project. Council as a whole feels strongly about protecting our water and our residents. As a result of the discussion which took place, the council was not interested in selling or leasing the land and directed the city manager to respond accordingly to the applicant. That response was sent out last Monday, June the 15th, and is currently posted on the city website. Several comments have been made that the city council rejects Bellbrook Mountain, and this is not the case at all. Council responded solely to the request by the applicant, which was for the sale or lease of land. As I mentioned before, council was not supportive of that request. We did not in any way evaluate the merits or feasibility of the Bellbrook Mountain project. The applicant has been advised of the next step of the process, which would be before the city planning board. I just want to clarify the matter. If anyone has questions, please feel free to contact either myself or the city manager. And that's all I have for tonight. We have no public hearing of ordinances. We have no introductions, but we do have before us tonight 2 resolutions. Resolution 2020-M, Deputy Mayor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 2020-M, a resolution by Bellbrook City Council to request the City of Bellbrook's share of the funds from the County Coronavirus Relief Distribution Fund and affirming that upon receipt of such funds, all expenditures therefrom will be in compliance with Section 5001 of the CARES Act and any other applicable laws and regulations. Whereas the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, 116 Public Law 136, the CARES Act, was signed into law by the President of the United States on March 27, 2020. And whereas the Ohio General Assembly established a process for distributing funds provided by the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act and House Bill 481 of the 133rd General Assembly, House Bill 481, and whereas House Bill 481 requires subdivisions receiving funds under Section 1 of the Act to pass a resolution affirming that funds from the County Coronavirus Relief Distribution Fund may be expended only to cover the costs of the subdivision consistent with the requirements of Section 5001 of the CARES Act as described in 42 USC 801, formerly 42 USC 601, and any applicable regulations before receiving said funds. And whereas the City of Bellbrook is requesting its share of funds from the County Coronavirus Relief Distribution Fund, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of City Bellbrook, State of Ohio, Section 1, the City of Bellbrook affirms that all funds received from the County Coronavirus Relief Distribution Fund pursuant to House Bill 481 be expended only to cover the costs of the subdivision consistent with the requirements of Section 5001 of the CARES Act as described in 42 USC 801, formerly 42 USC 601, and any applicable regulations and guidance only to cover expenses that, one, are necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to the coronavirus disease 2019. Number two, were not accounted for in the City of Bellbrook's most recently approved budget as of March 27, 2020. Number three, were incurred during the period that begins March 1st, 2020 and ends on December 30th, 2020. Section 2, in compliance with House Bill 481, be it resolved that the Council of the City of Bellbrook, that the City of Bellbrook's Financial Administrative Service Director shall take all the necessary action to, one, on or before October 15th, 2020, pay any unencumbered balance of the money in the City of Bellbrook's local Coronavirus Relief Fund to the County Treasurer. Two, on or before December 28th, 2020, pay the balance of any money in the City of Bellbrook's local Coronavirus Relief Fund to the State Treasury in a manner prescribed by the City Manager, Finance Director of the Ohio Office of Management and Budget. And three, provide any information related to any payments received under House Bill 481 to the Director of the Ohio Office of Budget Management as requested. Section 3, it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and relating to the adoption of this resolution were adopted in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council, any of its committees that result in formal action were in meetings open to the public. In compliance with all legal requirements, including not limited to Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 4, this resolution shall take effect and be in full force from and after the date of this passage. I guess this is the first process in the city making itself eligible for funds available through the CARES Act. And I'll let Melissa talk a little bit about what the process is going to entail.
So upon passage of this resolution, which is step 1, we have to submit this to Greene County, and we also have to submit this to the state of Ohio as well. And what that will do is federal money came to the state is distributing it to each county, and then the county is distributing it to the local municipalities. So David Graham had sent out some information, I think it was just last week, basically outlining the process that they were going to go through and how they were going to be distributing those funds and the calculation that they were going to use to determine how much each municipality in the county was going to receive. And it was determined that they were going to follow the same local government allocation, and we would receive funds to the equivalent of our local government fund allocation from 2019. So the amount that we are expecting to receive once we submit the resolution to the county and they receive the funds, which I believe should be occurring very soon, Bellbrook will receive approximately $80,000. So there was one thing that, it was a 4-page document that Pam and I had placed in the packet. This was some guidance that was also attached in the correspondence from the county auditor. And it goes over what can and cannot be used, the expenditures that can be used with the funds and things that are not allowed to be used with the funds. Unfortunately, revenue replacement is not an acceptable expenditure. And I know that a lot of other local governments have really expressed a lot of unease with that, just because that's where everybody has been hit the hardest, is with the loss of revenue. So we are going to be taking a look at these requirements, and we are in the very early stages of trying to identify what the funds could be used for, but there will likely be some purchases that will be able to be made that would help the city with the telecommunications and technology piece as a result of the pandemic and our closures and remote work and things like that. And then we are also able to issue grants to some of our local businesses that were closed. That's going to be the thing that's going to be a little bit tricky, and it's going to take a lot of thought, because the county is also going to be able to give out grants. So we have to make sure that there are no duplicated efforts with the distribution of funds. So we just found out about all of this and how much money we would be expecting just last week. So we still have a lot of research to do, and we will circle back around with council and let you guys know kind of what we're thinking in terms of these expenditures, and be in communication at the next meeting. So this is just step one to be able to receive that money.
Thank you, Melissa. Any discussion amongst council on resolution 2020-M? Seeing none, can I have a motion for resolution 2020-M?
I'll make a resolution to approve resolution number 2020-M. Or make
Thanks,
a
Nick. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Dave.
A motion was made by Mr. Edwards to adopt resolution 2020-M, a resolution by Bellbrook City Council to request the City of Bellbrook's share of funds from the County Coronavirus Relief Distribution Fund, and affirming that upon receipt of such funds, all expenditures therefrom will be in compliance with Section 5001 of the CARES Act and any other applicable laws and regulations. This was seconded by Dr. Van Veldhuizen. Excuse me. Mr. Edwards.
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen.
Yes.
Mr. Havens.
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood.
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter.
Yes.
Mayor Schweller.
Yes. Next on the agenda is companion resolution number 2020-N. Councilwoman Middlestetter, please.
Thank you, Mayor. City of Bellbrook, resolution number 2020-N, a resolution establishing a new special revenue fund titled Local Coronavirus Relief Fund. Whereas the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act 116, Public Law 136, the CARES Act, was signed into law by the President of the United States on March 27, 2020. And whereas the Ohio General Assembly established a process for distributing funds provided by the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act in House Bill 481 of the 133rd General Assembly. And whereas House Bill 481 requires subdivisions receiving funds under Section 1 of the Act to create a fund to segregate and account for the receipts and expenditures associated with the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. And whereas the fund shall be titled the Local Coronavirus Relief Fund, and whereas the establishment of the Local Coronavirus Relief Fund will allow the city to properly account for receipt of these funds. Now, therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby resolves Section 1, that the local coronavirus relief fund is hereby established and shall be numbered as Fund 200 in the City of Bellbrook Chart of Accounts. Section 2, that this resolution shall take effect and be in force forthwith.
Okay, so this is part 2 of being able to accept the relief funds from the county. So we have to put them in their own fund, and that can only be done by resolution of council to create a new fund. And so that is what this does. And this is the last and final piece of what we need to do to be able to accept these funds. That's it.
Any discussion amongst council on resolution 2020-N?
No, Mayor.
Can I have a motion, please?
I propose that we accept resolution 2020-N.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
A motion was made by Mrs. Middlestetter to adopt resolution 2020-N, a resolution establishing a new special revenue fund titled Local Coronavirus Relief Fund. And this was seconded by Mr. Greenwood. Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood,
Yes.
Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor Schweller.
Yes, thank you. Next up on the agenda is the city manager report.
Okay, so we have quite a few items to just hit on tonight. First up is the Parks Commissioner appointment. There was a letter that was sent out where the judge issued a new appointment date for the next Parks Commissioner, which would be September 30th of 2020. So I have already reached out to the executive director of the parks, and they already have a job description and an application and instructions for which interested parties can apply on their website. So if you go to the Bellbrook Sugar Creek Parks District website, there is a Get Involved tab at the top, and Parks Commissioner is listed right there if you hover over that, and all of that information is there. So I will also start to push this out through our communication channels. And just to kind of review what that is all about is there are 3 Parks Commissioners, and there was a memorandum of understanding that was just recently executed this year, just a few meetings ago actually, which will require 1 resident of Sugar Creek to have a seat on that board and 1 resident of Bellbrook to have a seat on that board. And there is not currently a resident of Bellbrook on the commissioner's board. So this would be for a resident of Bellbrook that lives within the city limits. So I will make sure that I get that information out, and we will start to try to find some interested parties. But all of the applications and interest will be filtered through the Parks District, and then they will share those interested parties with both the township and the city, and then we'll go through an interview process. So I'll keep everybody posted on that, because there will be a way for council to be involved in that selection also. So I'll keep everybody posted on that. There was a Property Review Commission appeal case that was in the courts. It was related to 7 West Franklin Street. It was recently dismissed by the courts last week. It was an appeal on the decisions on the maintenance violations of the property. And it was from a hearing back in November of 2019. And so that case has been dismissed by the courts, but unfortunately the case actually cost the city nearly $12,000 just to have our attorney respond to the case. So unfortunately, that was a cost that just has to be absorbed by the city since the case was dismissed. But I think that it's definitely worth noting that. The FOP will begin their negotiations this week. So the sergeants and the officers have 2 different FOP reps. And there will also be 2 different contracts as a result this year. They had the same contract because they had the same representative the last contract. And now that they have 2 different representatives, it's going to be 2 different contracts, which is just going to be another layer that we'll have to wade through in trying to get those executed. So the current contract expires July 31st, but it was extended due to the pandemic. So thankfully, we're able to all get back around a table a lot sooner than what we thought we would. So I will keep council posted on that as well. There was a water system discussion with Greene County. They held a meeting and invited the city manager of Xenia along with myself, and just kind of went over their future water system upgrades, and it's including softening and some expansion goals. And they offered the opportunity for both Bellbrook and Xenia to consider utilizing their system through the purchase of their water. And at this time, there's not a need for us to purchase water from another system, but I just wanted to pass that along to council that was presented to me and the city manager of Xenia in a meeting just last week. Our first farmers market of this season was held just, let's see, 2 Saturdays ago now. We'll have another one this Saturday, which is going to be from 10 to 1 in the parking lot. And we had some new vendors, which was really good. And we had a lot of people come through, which was great too, even though it downpoured the first 15 minutes or so, but it didn't keep people away. There were people in rain boots and umbrellas, and they were getting their produce and their baked goods, and it was great to have some normalcy downtown. The last point that I want to touch on is our gas taxes. Our June receipt of gas taxes was the first significant dip that we had seen in the last 5 months. Our January to May average was approximately $34,000 a month received, and in June our receipt was $24,000, so it was about 27% lower. But I do want to note that comparison to the same period of 2019, the 5-month average from 2019 was only 21,000. So as everybody may remember, there was a gas tax increase that occurred. So we were budgeted to receive much more in gas taxes this year than what we have previously. So with the dip in gas taxes that occurred just in the month of June so far, I'm not sure how long that's going to last, but it will probably be a couple months worth of a dip just because of folks traveling a little bit less and the economy being most things shut down and a lot of people sheltering at home. So we're still at higher receipts than what we were in 2019. Sorry, totally got tripped up there. So even though we're lower than what we were budgeted and what we have been seeing in the last 5 months, we're still ahead from where we were in 2019, which is still good. So that's all I have for now.
Does anyone on council have any questions of the city manager?
I had a question today from a resident. The gas tax income is based on the number of registrations in Bellbrook. Is that correct?
No, the gas tax is actually it's a sales tax on the sale of gasoline. So we do have a motor vehicle registration fee that we do receive, and that's separate. And we'll likely see a little bit of a dip in those because people weren't able to renew their registrations, but they will eventually have to renew their registration. So it may just be a delay, but those are two separate things.
But how is the gas tax calculated then?
It's from straight receipts from the pumps.
So the pumps that are in the city of Bellbrook?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with the ones that are in the city of Bellbrook necessarily.
Well, then how do they calculate our share?
That's a really good question. I've never really figured out how that is calculated exactly. So I will look into that for you, Elaine.
Okay, because I was asked that and that's what we understood, but okay, thanks.
Yeah, I thought it was related to receipts from the gas stations in Bellbrook. I could be wrong, but it's only 3, right?
Yeah, 3. I'll reach out and verify that. I've never asked that question. So I will follow up with that for sure.
Thanks.
Any other questions of the city manager?
I just have one. You said you had a meeting with Greene County about the water. Do we have any new customers coming online in the future, near future, with respect to development like around Sugar Creek?
Right now, I mean, they're still developing sections of the landings, so those are still coming on. And then there are still lots for sale in Highview Terrace. I mean, the other larger developments, I don't know if there are any other sections of Redwood Living that have not come online. I know that they were still constructing, but I'm not sure what they have left over there. So no new developments that I'm aware of, but there is some remaining building from some of the larger developments that remains.
This topic rolls around every few years. Those who've been around a while will recognize the attempt to get us to buy water from Greene County. And we don't need to. We've got plenty.
Absolutely. Any other questions of the city manager? Okay, moving on to old business. I see we have our LJB representative who is now in the Zoom conference room. And Melissa, if you'll give us an introduction on the North Bellevue Road update.
Okay, so it's the moment we've all been waiting for. It's the presentation of the solution and the cost estimate for the repair of North Bellevue Road that collapsed on March 20th with the heavy rains that we experienced. And so, as many of you recall, we contracted with LJB as the engineer to determine what the best solution would be for replacing the structure and getting the road back up and running. And so they have completed their assessment, and we have Matt Gardner, who is a civil engineer with LJB, and he is on the Zoom call with us to talk about the solution and the cost estimate. And then if council is satisfied with the presentation, then we can go ahead and make a motion to solicit bids and be able to get that process started. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Matt for his presentation.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Real quick, I heard a little bit about the gas tax question. And I do know from ODOT that they said traffic is up to about 90% of their volumes now, whereas a couple months ago it was down to 50%. So that gas tax should be rising back up. And the formula is based on, I think, a combination of your road mileage and your population. That's how it's determined. But okay, I should be able to share my screen here. Is that correct? Or I'm getting a button that I can't. So okay, I'll just speak without any presentation materials. So North Bellevue, like Melissa was saying, we had a significant rain event on March 20th. About 2.5 inches of rain fell that day, which is quite significant, and actually resulted in a flood event of between a 100-year and a 500-year flood event. And for those of you who are a little bit unfamiliar with those terms, a 100-year flood event has a likelihood of occurring in any given year 1% of the time. So the higher the number of the year for the flood event, the rarer it is and the more significant amount of rain fell. So when you're talking 100 to 500-year event, that is severe and not something that is typically designed for. So the existing culvert that was washed out, they were a pair of 72-inch metal pipes. And they had half-height head walls, which is the concrete on the end of each end of the pipe. And when you say half-height, that means it goes up half the diameter of the pipe. So in this situation on March 20th, the water would have been above the top of the pipe. And because there are twin pipes, there's a likelihood of debris in the creek, tree branches clogging very easily because you have an obstruction in the middle of the stream where the twin pipes come together like this. So we don't know exactly what caused the failure, but it was likely a combination of debris clogging the pipes, significant, highly unusual rain event, and then also with the half-height head wall, as the water rises, there's nothing to prevent saturation of the soil, the embankment around the pipes as it rises above the concrete head wall. So once that water finds a way through the embankment, it can wear and erode that soil very quickly, causing the pipes to fail. So we are contracted with the city on March 31st to design a replacement for that. The stream that runs underneath North Bellevue is a FEMA stream, which means we have to do a hydraulic study to ensure that the water level in our proposed culvert condition is not higher at any point in the stream than it was during the existing condition when it had the two 72-inch pipes there. So we have to run a model and look both upstream and downstream of the pipe. So we looked all the way from Clara Road, which is the upstream bridge or culvert, all the way down to the Little Sugar Creek Road crossing, which is the downstream bridge or crossing. So we ran those models to ensure there's no rise during the 100-year storm event. And then we have a certificate that shows that there's a no rise during that condition that the floodplain coordinator has to sign off on. So the proposed solution is a concrete arch that's got a 6-foot rise, which is the same rise as the existing pipes that were washed out. However, the span is wider. So it's a 28-foot span. So the arch, the center of the rise is 6 feet tall. So this allows us to do a couple things. We don't have the issue with debris getting clogged with the obstruction in the middle of the creek because we don't have the twin structures anymore. And with a concrete pipe, it's got a longer life cycle than the corrugated metal pipes that were in there before. The life cycle on a concrete culvert should be 100 years long. The other things we have looked at and worked with the city on is determining the length of the culvert. So because we were able to do a full height head wall, which is higher than the half height head wall that was in the existing condition, we're able to actually shorten the pipes up, the length of the pipe up a little bit, as well as make the grading alongside the road a little bit flatter. So I know today on North Bellevue, there's no sidewalks or pedestrian facilities. And knowing that it's close to the kindergarten K-2 Stephen Bell Elementary School, there's a possibility to add sidewalks in the future, anywhere between now and 100 years from now. So that pipe length and grading allows sidewalks to be placed on either side of the road if that becomes the wish of the city sometime down the road. Also, we were able to make the road a little bit safer. In the existing condition, there was guardrail, which was there as a result of the steep slopes coming off the road. And with the flatter slopes, we're able to remove that obstruction of the guardrail away from the road. So those are a couple of the safety benefits that we were able to apply with the culvert. Let's see, as part of the design, we also had to do geotechnical borings to ensure that the foundation was estimated properly from a cost standpoint and there would not be any surprises. So the bedrock is very high in this location, so we're able to do a spread footing, which is cheaper than some of the other footing options if you had to get down to a deeper bedrock. So that's good news there. And then the other situation that we've kind of had to manage around is there's an existing sanitary line that runs underneath Bellevue Drive and below the creek. Thankfully, it was not impacted by the washout, but it's relatively shallow because it's just above the bedrock. So we've been coordinating with Greene County sanitary engineers to make sure that the culvert does not cause any adverse effects to that 8-inch sanitary line there. Next, for the cost estimate. So we have a cost estimate that's been prepared. I can't show it to you now, but it's $420,000, and that is for the entire construction, materials and construction. And from a time frame and talking to some of our sub-consultants who can manufacture these types of systems, if this project was to begin in early July, it should be wrapped up sometime about late September. So it will go a little bit into the school year, but it would still be wrapped up fairly quickly. So the next steps would be to bid this project out with a 2-week period to solicit bids and then after that, award the project hopefully in early July, and move from there. I guess from a maintenance of traffic standpoint, today that road is closed, so there's not really much to do. Thankfully, no residents have been cut off by the culvert washout. But the street intersection just to the south, Barrel Drive, that should not be impacted by any of the construction. So all the construction would be within the portion of the road that is already closed today. Wish I could show some pictures and stuff of what it looks like, but does anybody have any questions about what I've discussed?
So are you sure you can't screen share?
Let me try again. So I clicked the
Okay.
screen share. Now I've got the ability. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I have one question while you're sharing your screen, Matt, and
Sure.
this may be more for Melissa. But when you put this out for bids and the city looks at it, I guess coming out of the federal government, there's different types. There are, of course, the lowest cost bidder, but there's also best value. And I'm wondering what the city uses, who makes that decision?
Actually, what we had planned to do was once the bids were submitted, we were going to have another city council meeting. I believe I talked to the mayor about this. We were going to, and this is probably better served for a work session, but we would review the bids as a group and then we would select, we would have some recommendations, obviously from staff standpoint, and then share those with city council. And then we would have a resolution to award the bid at a city council meeting after that work session that would occur. So that would be a collaborative effort.
Okay, can you guys see my screen? It's a Google Street View right now. Okay, so this is what it looks like before the washout. And you can see the guardrails up close to the road, and after that, it's a very steep fall off. And you can kind of see the lengths of the twin pipes extending beyond the guardrail. And so on March 20th, thought I had some photos to share and I can't find them. Here we go. So on March 20th, can you see this picture I've got here now? Yeah, so this is the result, and you can see these pipes were washed away. Quite a bit of embankment was taken away with it. So there's approximately 75 feet of road repair that needs to occur along with that culvert replacement. And it was just a very significant rain event that is way beyond the normal type of precipitation we have. This is what it looks like currently. Here's the downstream head walls that I was discussing. You can see where the pipe would fit into it at half the diameter. And this is what can cause issues if water rises above that, then it saturates the embankment very quickly. So our proposed solution, I've got a plan sheet here. So our proposed solution has a full height head wall. Here we're looking at the road. It's oriented, so north is kind of to the right. Here's North Bellevue Drive. Here's Barrel. And then the creek is coming through right here. And so the proposed solution would be an arch structure with a full height head wall on each side. We're able to flatten the grading out, and we will do not need any guardrail here. And it, like I said, it will allow future possibility of sidewalk on either side if that became the city's desire. Fortunately, we do not need to purchase any new right-of-way. There's one thing to point out: the existing culvert was beyond the existing right-of-way, so there could be an opportunity to just purchase a portion of this to cover the head wall. Again, the existing head walls and existing pipe were outside the existing right of way, so it's kind of up to the city if they want to leave that outside or bring that inside and not have any future issues down the road. But you could also construct this just with work agreements. These driveways will remain open at all times during the construction, as well as this intersection. I have a picture of what this culvert looks like. So you can see what the arch structure looks like. It's a lot of technical dimensioning and instructions on this drawing, but the arch is located here. This is kind of a cross section of it, with 1 foot of it being buried beneath the soil to kind of put a natural stream bed down, as well as to protect against any erosion. And then the foundation.
Picture updated.
What's that?
I don't think the picture updated.
Oh, did not. What part are you looking at now?
The previous picture?
With the aerial?
Yes.
Okay. Here we go. Is that better?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Sorry about that. So here's the arch, what the culvert would look like. And it would be 1 foot buried into the soil, and then the footings would be right on top of the bedrock. So the actual culvert height is 7 foot, with 1 foot of it buried and 6 foot clear. So that's what it would look like if you're down in the stream looking into it. Any questions that may have been prompted by going through some of the pictures and illustrations?
So is there a bottom to the culvert, or is this?
It's a three-sided structure. It's placed on top of concrete foundation. This allows for a stream bottom, a natural stream bottom. However, in talking with Greene County sanitary engineers, their sanitary sewer is located just on top of the bedrock. So we have included a cost to pave on top of that with concrete to protect against erosion on top of their sanitary line. So that I'm still waiting on an answer back if they're going to require that. So that's what we've included in the cost estimate as of right now. I anticipate they're going to require it. But the three-sided structure is a very common type structure. You can also have a four-sided box with the bottom, but a lot of times in those situations, those are also buried a foot down to allow for a natural stream bottom.
Okay. You said no guardrails. I noticed that the width of this bridge is like 66 feet.
That's correct.
Why so wide?
So here's kind of a cross section. You guys can see it. So the road is up pretty high, even though kind of as you're driving down the road, it feels like you're going down a dip as you go across it. The road is still quite a bit higher than the stream bottom. So this is a cross section looking into the road. Down here, this heavy black line where my hand is kind of going over across, that's the flow line of the stream. And so with a 6 foot rise, you still have 7 or 8 feet from the top of the culvert up to the road. So there are a couple options. You could build this concrete head wall up really high and pull this in tighter, or you can keep this concrete head wall down lower and not spend so much on the concrete head wall, and then have a natural grade down to it. So kind of two reasons. One, it's the cost benefit of length of shortening the culvert, but then you have to raise this wall up. The second is you want to provide a safer section to avoid a guardrail requirement, or if you wanted to allow sidewalk in the future. So it was kind of a cost benefit analysis of when to use a shorter culvert versus raise this up quite a bit. But really it's driven by the difference in the height, the elevation of the stream versus the elevation of the road.
And no requirement for a guardrail of any sort.
No, not in this length. So the requirement is you have an 8-foot clear zone with a flatter slope. So that's what's provided. And then beyond that, we have slopes 4-to-1, 5-to-1. We could actually go down to 2-to-1 and it would still be a safe traveling road for that design speed.
And so is that normal vegetation? Should we
Yeah,
mow?
this is grass. This is easy to maintain. You can mow grass up to a 3-to-1 slope, but typically on a roadside, you'd see a 4-to-1 to 6-to-1 slope, just like you're seeing here.
Is there a lip on that head to make sure the mower doesn't slip off?
Yeah, so this head wall is about a foot higher than where the grass would be located. One thing we haven't talked about, but could be an option, is if to put a railing on top of the head wall, if that's a potential issue for, I don't know, kids playing here. There could be potential to add railing. We've done that in the past as well. We have not put it here with the plans just because there's not a proposed sidewalk or proposed bike path at this time. So the distance from the roadway to this head wall is anywhere from 17 to 25 feet.
And if we didn't bring the road up like you've got it drawn, we'd basically have to cut out more existing asphalt to bring it down and repair longer.
So let me show you one other view. So this is the profile of the road. So now we're looking kind of into the stream. So here's our culvert. This is the existing and proposed profile of the road. So if we were going to lower this road even more, then this design speed curve that we'd have to introduce would not be safe. So we're kind of maintaining the existing curvature of the road. The other consideration that there are utilities that are running across here. So we need to provide cover from the top of the arch to the roadway for, I think there's a telecommunications line and a gas line coming through here.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Matt, I've got a question for you. We first started talking about this, I was thinking the number was under $300,000 as far as the cost.
So yeah, we were talking to our subcontractor who has the information on the structure, and the initial cost they provided to me was for the actual forming of the structure, not including delivery and labor costs. So that's what increased it by the $100,000.
Okay. Is this bridge made locally or?
So this is going to be an open bid. So there's manufacturers all over the place that can make this.
Okay.
The opportunity is to have it manufactured locally.
Okay. Is that the end of your planned presentation?
Yes, that's all I was planning on presenting, but if there's any other questions, I can be happy to answer those.
Any more questions of council for Matt?
I do. Matt, the hydraulic study, can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, so the hydraulic study, with a FEMA regulated stream, there's a requirement that, let me go back to a different view here. So with this stream, Possum Run, there was a requirement to make sure that when you do anything on top of the stream, that you're not going to cause the water elevation to rise anywhere upstream. So we looked all the way back to the upstream bridge at Clio, or anywhere downstream. So we looked all the way, analyzed all the way back to the downstream bridge at Little Sugar Creek Road. So within kind of the floodway boundary of that stream, which is defined by a 2-year rain event. So that a 2-year rain event, we use software to model how far outside of the stream the water would rise. And so we use that as kind of that's the procedure, to use that as the limits of your area. And then we would apply a 100-year storm event to see how high the stream surface would become. And we analyze that at different points along the stream, all the way from Clara Road to Little Sugar Creek. And at every single point, we have to ensure that under the proposed culvert condition, that water surface elevation never increases beyond what the existing 72-inch twin culvert water surface was. And if it even goes up by 1/100th of a foot, that's no good, and we have to use a different size culvert and reanalyze that. So it's intended to make sure that any improvements on the road are not going to adversely impact either downstream or upstream infrastructure or any houses or buildings within the stream or nearby the stream. So for the entire length of this stream from Clara Road to Little Sugar Creek, by putting in this culvert, the water surface elevation will not be raised. It'll actually be lowered in some places due to the slightly wider waterway elevation of the arch.
Okay, so your analysis is only from Clio Road down?
That's correct. It's from Clio to Little Sugar Creek Road.
Now, with all the future development in that area, will that impact that hydraulic study?
Well, with any future development, the developer is required to ensure that their runoff from their development is not any higher than the existing runoff condition before they start. So that requirement will be on the developer to ensure that they are not releasing water at a higher rate. I know there was some question about whether some upstream development caused this stream event. That would only be the case if the developers were not following the regulations and getting permits properly. Like, I know there's a big detention pond up here by Cabela's, and that's intended to hold the water and release it back into the natural streams at a rate that would be equal to what it would have been on the existing virgin condition.
So future development would probably include more retention ponds. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So for instance, over here on Clara Road near that medical center, if there were other developments and concrete parking lots, those developments would need to detain water and release it at a rate that was equal or less than what the existing rate was. And this is standard procedure for any development all across Ohio. So this is the kind of the standard operating procedure for any new developments and the way these hydraulic runs on streams are calculated.
Who oversees that?
The permitting process with the city?
No, with the development in those areas, is that a state? Do they overlook the engineering or the county when they put in developments like that to make sure they have enough retention?
So I'm not sure, Melissa, if you can help me, who is the one reviewing developers' applications and stormwater pollution plans and stormwater applications. Those vary by municipality who actually signs off on those and reviews those.
That's true. So it just depends on the municipality. For some of the larger municipalities will likely have their own staff member that would be responsible for that. So in that particular area, it would likely be Centerville. I know that Jessica had to look at the proposal from LJB and had to sign a no rise certification in order to be able to proceed. So I know that at least from our perspective, if anybody is doing anything in the floodway or if anybody's building a structure of any sort, in a waterway, then Jessica would be the approver on behalf of Bellbrook. And I know that Al Kuzma is the floodplain administrator for the county. So if, at least in Greene County, if an individual municipality or a smaller municipality did not have the staff capacity to be able to do that, then that would fall to Al Kuzma in Greene County. Now, when we get into Montgomery County and some of these other municipalities, I'm not sure how they're structured.
So it sounds like there's not a whole lot of standardization when it comes to those issues with runoff.
There are standard requirements. The review process varies, but the reviewers are following the same standards.
So who makes the standard? Is that federal?
That's coming from Ohio, state of Ohio.
State of Ohio. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned that this was a significant rain event.
Yes.
If we were to have that same event, would this bridge hold up?
Yes. I don't know if
Guarantee
I
it?
get what's that?
Do you guarantee it?
Yeah. Well, if the 2.5 inches is accurate, and we had that fall in this for our culvert, it would hold up, because we actually have a model that would. Let me stop sharing this and show this other model. We have a model that charts what the elevation of the stream is under different storm events. So this is the hydraulic report, 103 pages. I'm not going to bore you with all of it, but so these are the models that show the cross sections at different points in the stream and the water elevations for different rain events. So we've charted the 100-year and so this is the culvert here at Bellevue, and this is a 500-year event. So you can see it is way up here. And so we were dealing with somewhere between, this heavy dark line is the 500-year event, and this kind of dashed line below it, that's the 100-year event. And this line down here is the stream bed. So at somewhere where we were dealing with before would be an event about this elevation and would be passing underneath through the culvert. Okay. Now 500-year event, that would be going over top of the road again, but from a engineering perspective, you really can't design every road for a 500-year occurrence level, because those costs would just be astronomical.
What would you have to do to, you said the cost, but what would you do to do that?
So like Interstate 75, that's designed for a 100-year event. Let alone a local street like Bellevue. There's nobody would be designing this for a 500-year event. The only thing to do for that would be to raise the road and put it in a culvert that's about twice as big. So I mean, you could do it with costs, but again, you're looking at doubling your costs for something that's unlikely to happen during the entire life cycle of the culvert.
Okay, my last question on this particular bridge, what would be the inspection requirements, and what would be some of the things they would look at?
I'm sorry, what was your first? What kind of requirements?
Inspection.
That should be similar to other concrete structures, so they should be looking at that every couple of years, and usually that's 30-minute trip, and just looking underneath for any erosion or any inexposed metal reinforcement or any cracking in the foundation. significant cracking or settlement issues. So that should be kind of standard maintenance that all concrete structures have. And it should be very low maintenance for the first couple of decades. And then after that, there could be some sealing that needs to occur.
Now, the old bridge, was that put in '87?
I think it was 88. We don't have the existing plans, but my understanding was 88. And that was in decent shape, according to the reports that I had seen. So I don't think the metal structure failed. I think it was probably a combination of clogging from debris, as well as the embankment getting saturated and water finding a route through the embankment and washing that away around those culverts.
I did notice those culverts had some fairly large rust holes in the bottom of them. Could that have been part of the problem?
It could have been. That could have been part of the problem, because not only could the water be saturated from above the head wall, if you've got holes in the culvert, then you're providing a path for water to get into the culvert and around it. So that's one of the downsides of a metal culvert is you could have rust, or you can have acidity in the stream that eats through that metal that could cause ruptures in your pipe.
So as far as the entity that would suggest inspection, would that be more likely the builder?
No, that's going to be belonging to, that's going to be part of the city's infrastructure, and that should be on the city's infrastructure maintenance review list. And that's something that could be contracted out to all sorts of different consultants that can do that. But that's kind of the standard maintenance that all cities should have of their infrastructure.
Now, I was kind of asking who would, it's like when you buy a car, they got recommended intervals of inspection and things like that. Who makes that? Who falls
So the state of Ohio has recommendations on the maintenance frequency and what that actual process is. So it's a standardized process.
Okay, that's all I got.
Any other questions for Matt of Council?
I have one more question if no one else has one. Just humor me, Matt. I noticed that the bridge upstream and downstream are essentially concrete sidewalls and I-beam. Is there a reason that we chose this design versus the design of those other bridges in that way? Is it cost? Is it performance?
It's a cost savings. So I know Clara Road, that span is quite a bit larger, and that was a brand new road. So the requirements of that were a little bit different in that that span went over the entire floodway, whereas this one just has to either equal or lower the water level from the previous culvert. So we didn't have to put in as large of a structure to replace the 72-inch pipe. So it's a cost savings to put in the concrete arch instead of a longer span I-beam type bridge.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Matt, thank you for the very informative presentation. I'm glad the screen sharing went well. You made a lot of sense out of the drawings that I heretofore did not understand. I'll be honest about that.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
At this
Matt.
time, we need a motion from council to authorize the bidding of the project.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. We have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Sorry, had to unmute. A motion was made by Mr. Havens to send the North Bellevue Culvert project out to bid. This was seconded by Mr. Greenwood. Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood,
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes.
Mayor Schwaller.
Yes. And Matt, thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Next up on the agenda is the park commissioner candidate.
Really, there's not really any discussion on that. I think that I covered everything in the CM update, so we're just gonna have information on our website. So I think that I kind of put the cart before the horse with the CM update, so
Okay.
I have
That's
nothing
fine. That's what I
to
thought.
add on that.
Okay,
Just
good.
if you have anybody in mind, send them to Parks District website to apply.
Will do. Will do. Next on the agenda is new business, the tax budget in 2021 reporting.
Okay, so this, as most of you who have been on council for quite some time know, that in July, what we do is we receive the preliminary property tax figures from the county to be incorporated into a tax budget. What a tax budget does is it serves as our first certificate of estimated resources for 2021. And so what we had to do basically is we had to tell them where we think that we're going to end 2020 and begin 2021, and give them just some estimates on our projected revenues and expenses for 2021. So tax budget is normally a little more complicated. It requires a resolution by council. It's a much more formal process, but during the pandemic, they have waived the requirement for the full-on tax budget. So they just sent over a very brief spreadsheet, which was in the packet, in order for us to plug in our figures for our estimated property taxes and other revenues and our local government revenues. They are not projecting anything that was concerning in terms of our receipts for 2021. We're pretty much right on track. We were expecting to maybe see a delay in our receipts for 2020, but we would eventually receive those. So our figures for 2021 were not anything outside of the ordinary. So the only thing that I really want to just draw some attention to council is there was an attachment, which was not a requirement to file with the county, but it was the 2021 financial summary. So just a quick review, when we went through and projected the 2020 budget, I projected that our ending balance at the end of this year would be 5.6 million. And as it stands right now, we are looking to start or to end 2020 rather with a $6.9 million ending balance. So my budgeting is typically very conservative in that our revenues are typically higher and our expenses are typically lower. So we'll see how the rest of the year pans out. Obviously, this is just until the end of May, so the first 5 months. So we still have a long way to go with the rest of the year, but I will note a couple of highlights to this. Is at the end of 2020, it's looking like the water fund is gonna hit right around $3 million in a fund balance. General fund still is staying stable, and the police and fire funds were both expected to end in a deficit, and they're actually going to be adding to the ending fund balance. So again, it's still very early on, but things are not looking bad at all. So this again is just to serve as the amount of money that we hope to receive in 2021, and obviously this will change with our final budget filing. So it's just our first glance at things. So that's pretty much it.
Is there,
I think you muted again, Mayor.
does everyone council have any questions?
None, Mayor.
Okay, moving on, committee reports. Service.
Thank you, Mayor. The service department's running full throttle, working the yearly trimming projects they have. I received an email from the Miami Conservancy District on the subject of PFAS, which is polyfluorinated alcohol substances. That's a pretty rough term, but I just want to read this little section of the report. The new analytical methods open a Pandora's box. Over the past couple of decades, new analytical techniques have emerged that make it possible to detect the contaminants in water at concentrations as low as parts per trillion. The emergence of these new analytical methods led to discovery of previously undetectable contaminants in natural waters, as well as treated drinking water. Because of these new capabilities, the scientific community began to discover many of the chemicals that are used in common household consumer products, as well as pharmaceuticals, were also present at low concentrations in many rivers, streams, and aquifers all over the world. Some of these chemicals were also detected in treated drinking water. PFAS is one of the groups of these chemicals detected both in natural waters and treated drinking water. Discovery of previously undetectable contaminants in drinking water was prompted questions by the public water system operators nationwide. So why do I report on this? City of Bellbrook has a history of being proactive with respect to the safety of our water. Our service department maintains an awareness of our water systems and other water systems in our area. I want our citizens to know our water is safe. And with the highly detectable means of detecting contaminants as low as parts per trillion, I feel pretty safe about the water. The state of Ohio has really become proactive and try to fix some of the issues we have, like Lake St. Mary's, some of the farm runoff and stuff. And I'm glad to see that they're doing that. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Forrest. Next up is the safety, which is TJ Hope. Kind of, Forrest, did you want to add anything to that, or we can just pass it at this point?
Police department has ticked up a little bit with people moving around a little more. Nothing real serious. Fire department, you know, I don't think they ever slowed down with the EMS part of it. So shout out to those guys who are doing a great job.
Thank you. Finance and audit.
Nothing more tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Community affairs.
Nothing more tonight either.
Thank you. This now brings us to open discussion. Forrest, you want to start us off for tonight?
Sure. Saturday, there was a Black Lives Matter like a mini protest. I was there. I saw lots of people. They were peaceful. Our police department was helpful. They passed out water. And my main observation was peaceful Americans being Americans. So it turned out okay. Our emails just before this meeting, we had 3 letters from, one was from Don Walsh, one was from Meredith Brenniger, one was from Lakeisha Taylor. And I just let them know that I'll be reading those more in depth. I appreciate the communication to the council. And Melissa, the one thing that Don Walsh noted is on our website, our email addresses are not available on the website. Is that something we can fix?
Yeah, I can have those listed, no problem. If that's what council would like for me to do, I can make it happen.
Would be the city email, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes, city email, yes.
I actually thought those were already there.
I did too.
I did too. They used to be.
Forrest mentioned it when I was talking to him right before the meeting, and I didn't get in to check.
Because
And
I've gotten things from folks before, and that's the only
Yeah,
place I know they could have gotten it.
I'll check on it and we can reach out to our IT people to make sure that those are working.
Very good, thank you. Ernie,
I'd like to really just thank Matt for his time and effort and showing up to the meeting tonight and answering questions. Definitely not what I expected when it comes to a bridge or a culvert there. And it definitely looks good. So understanding that it may save us some money is also a good thing. So, you know, outside of that, really excited to see people getting back out. And I noticed that a lot of people are taking safety precautions and some aren't. And I think that that's all good. And I look forward to talking with more citizens, more residents of Bellbrook over the summer. That's all.
thank you, Ernie. Elaine,
The only thing I wanted to point out is that I know they're doing a fundraiser Friday night at the Bellhop to help Heather keep that place open. I think the information is on the websites and the community bulletin board.
I'm sorry, Elaine, to help who?
Bellhop Cafe. Mike Saban's
okay.
place. No, Heather's.
anything else, Elaine?
Nope, that's it.
Dr. Dave Van Veldhuizen,
Thank you, Mayor. Since Elaine brings it up, I miss Mike very much. He was an absolute pleasure to see and get to know, and I hope the event for Heather goes well. The only things I was going to mention, and I let Melissa know, a few residents as I've been out and about have been asking why the city and the township have two separate fire departments and police departments. And I said, that's a real good question. And when we start council meetings again, you ought to come ask or, send in the questions. So we'll see if they start exercising their constitutional privileges to come watch government in action. And a couple questions on the comprehensive plan. Again, referred people to the website. I think the website does a good job of keeping all that. It's there, easily accessible. And that is all my chicken scratchings that I can read. So that's what I have tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to see once we get those bids out, to get that work done on Bellevue as quickly as possible. I did a ride along with one of our police officers last Friday, and we had a call down that way. It took us an extra 8 minutes to go through behind Coles and around that way to get there. So the quicker that can get done, the better, as far as the residents and myself are concerned. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And our next meeting, I think, will be July the 13th. And I think just stay tuned for right now if we can do it in person or if we do the Zoom meeting again. We can maybe poll council at that time. We'll see if any more restrictions have been loosened up and we can see what our governor has to say, and maybe we can meet in person at that point in time. So just kind of stay tuned for right now. Anything else? Seeing nothing else to discuss tonight, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.